What's up, Purist? It's Bob from Purist Motorsports. We're going to take a look at some really awesome cars that this guy curates, the PAS collection. We've got two cars behind us, Supercharged 93s. Let's get started. What we've got in front of us, just for me, it's a basic thing. You're more of the numbers guy and knows the details of these things, but we're talking about a factory supercharged Spider and a factory supercharged hatchback Saleen Mustang, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
What are we looking at as far as production on these cars and numbers?
Well, the reality of it is, people that really love Saleen Mustangs, the 92s and 93s, which these cars look identical, seem to be the ones that are most popular because of the Recaro seats and the 17-inch wheels. So it makes the car look more modern. It's the end of the production, and the fact that you could get a Vortec supercharger as an option. In 93, they made 17 of the hardtops and 11 of the convertibles that you could order with the Vortec supercharger.
So there's only total 28 factory
about
supercharged?
28, according to the records that Saleen has, about 28. There were one or two cars that were supercharged at the dealership before being delivered to the customer, which is a little bit different. It's almost as good as having it installed directly by Saleen.
So, and that doesn't include like the SA10 production or any of the specialty cars or SCs. That's just your regular production?
Well, these were the regular production cars. And what people get a little bit confused with is they call this car an SC because it's supercharged. Right. The reality of it is the SC was a separate model. And we've got one here that we can look at a little bit later in the video. And these were really just a 93 Saleen supercharged. So there were actually two different models in 92 and 93. There was the 93 Saleen, and then there was the 93 SC.
Right.
And then, of course, the SA10, which is the creme de la creme.
Yeah, of course. Now, with that, the supercharger was added to what would be a factory Ford motor, drivetrain, right? That's
correct. What you have to understand is that the Saleen, being a small volume manufacturer, still had to fall within all the EPA compliance. Right. So what they did when they added the supercharger, it was an EPA approved kit from Vortec, an A-trim kit. It didn't even have the bypass. This car still has the plastic tube on it, which is very rare because it's the first thing people did when they got the car. It had a set of shorty headers on it, but full factory catalytic converters and full factory Ford exhaust system. And it had to be that way because it had to be able to pass emissions in all 50 states.
Now, the ones that were produced for convertible, do you know how many Spiders were made out of that? Do you know?
Most of the blower cars were already Spiders because they were fully option cars.
Okay. Very cool.
I don't recollect seeing one that didn't have the Spider option. Now, for those that don't know, the Spider option was the light bar. It's not really a roll bar, it's a light bar. And then there was a canvas type cover or vinyl cover that went over the back to make it emulate a two-seater.
Well, I know there was also like
you could get a windshield. Yes, you could get a windscreen, but that was not included as in the Spider package. That was optional.
Okay. Very cool. I know with this. I want to say, well, 93, that was a low production year. A lot of people don't know, 92 especially. 93, just over 100 cars.
Well, we were in a recession still. 92 and 93, we were in a recession for those older guys that remember that stuff. And these were very expensive cars in their day, and the Ford dealers were struggling to sell Mustangs. And the way that Saleen worked, they had their own pool of cars they could pull from and pull from dealership. And the dealerships maybe didn't order as many Mustangs because they were worried they weren't going to sell them.
Yeah. I do know, just from being a Fox aficionado, Fox Mustang aficionado, that the 93 production actually saw an increase in total Mustang production from Ford because it was the last year of this body style. So 92 to 93 as Ford production actually went up slightly because people wanted to get the last of a generation, knowing that the 94s were the body
and unfortunately
change.
in 92, Saleen was experiencing a lot of issues with cash flow and coming out of a bankruptcy. And so the 92 production was not there because of the issues that Saleen had internally. And that was really the year that they got everything back together again and came back. And 93 was then the year that showed how they were able to bring the company back to life.
Yeah, because they had, you had 9 SA10s produced, and then they produced, was it 4 SCs that year?
4 SCs. And I actually owned a 93 Saleen that was built in 94. The production on the car was in 94 because they got behind. And the car was a late build, and some of the spark plug wires were actually date coded 94.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. Now, I do know that some of the SA10s, the last of the production was May of 94 for those.
Right.
So it did eke into the first half of that, which for Ford would have been almost a full production year of 94, right? Because the actual production year starts in the August, early September for the next model year up. So 93, August of 93, 94 production started for the new body style. Now, this one is a leather equipped, factory leather.
Right, you could get a leather option, which were the Recaro seats covered in leather with Saleen stitching on them. In the 92, 93s, that's where they were really different than the earlier cars. The earlier cars had a seat by the name of FlowFit. It wasn't very comfortable, it looked nice. And then Saleen contracted with Recaro in 92, and from then on, they were using Recaros up until 2002 or 3.
Yeah, I will say that my preference is Recaros.
They're very comfortable seats.
The flow fits are not very, well, for me, they're just concrete hard. Some people like them, but I'm more of a Recaro guy, that's for sure. But the factory supercharged cars, you said they're all an A-trim Vortec kit that was added to them. None of the cars that you know of were option for the B trim at the time, do you know?
None of them I've ever seen or we've ever taken apart. They had stock 19 pound per hour injectors. They had FMUs, so there was no tuning chips or anything like that. It was just the exact Vortec kit you could buy from them at the time, installed by Saleen before the car was delivered.
And I say, having put one on a personal car of mine that was just a stock 302 with the 19-pound injectors, it's a very reliable. It cranks every time, and you don't have any kind of tuning issues, but because it works within the computer's parameters of what Ford did. It's actually, for its day, is a healthy upgrade, short of.
Well, they felt real fast until you drive some of the more modern cars, and I always say to myself, how in the world did I drive one of these cars and actually think they were fast compared to a pickup truck that makes 500 horsepower today or 400 plus horsepower?
Yeah, you thought you were king if you had 355s or 373s.
Exactly.
And it hauled the mail.
But everything else was slow back in the day, so this was pretty fast. But these cars are a lot of fun to drive. You feel very connected to the road. You don't have all the crazy computers. You don't have any of the crazy noise isolation, so you can hear it, feel it, and drive it. It's very much down-to-earth driving again. I wouldn't want to drive one every day, but it's really fun to get one out and drive one on the weekend and experience what driving was all about before technology took over.
Yeah, I will say that 9357 is one that was under my personal care for a bit of time, and that car had a storied history, and I drove it every day for
you did.
Like three years. And it was, with kids, hauling them, driving through, taking them into school and that kind of stuff. It was fun, but like you said, I think after about 24 months of it, I was ready to move on to something more comfortable, and I did.
Yeah.
But now, suspension-wise, the 90 to 93 cars, I know they were progressive rate springs starting in 90. It was probably a run-over change. They didn't really change much of the suspension other than maybe the shock manufacturer.
Right, the design of the suspension's all been the same since the inception of the Fox. Somewhere in the middle of the 92 production, they went from a Monroe Formula GP shock to a racecraft shock, which was basically a Carrera shock that they relabeled with a racecraft sticker on it.
And the Carreras were actually really big in the hot rod guys.
Right, they were circle track shocks and everything else too. So most of the later 92s and most of the 93s had Carreras on it. Now, if Saleen didn't have that and they had something else in stock when a car got ordered, like anything else in production with Saleen, it could have gotten something else put on it in order to get it out the door to get it to the dealer.
If it's one thing I have learned over the years is that Saleen was consistently inconsistent.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's all about business when it comes down to it. If it means getting a car out to a customer, that's what had to be done. It's to get it complete and in the customer's
Well,
hands.
you're right, Bob. These are still hand-built cars.
Mm-hmm.
These cars were built, believe it or not, on jack stands, and they used what they had. Now, granted, it wasn't like the car wouldn't get delivered if they didn't have the shocks, so they were going to take something they had, put it on the car, and send it out the door. And if there was a later complaint by the client who bought it, I've known Saleen to go through and say, okay, we'll replace it with this and send the dealer something and warranty it.
Well, I know the 89 that I had the Saleen Mustang shift knob in it, which for those that don't know, in 87, 88, they actually had a shift knob that was kind of looked like a porcelain insert that said
Correct.
Saleen Mustang.
Right.
My 89 was delivered with that shift knob, and I
Right.
had people say, oh, well, that's not correct. Somebody added it later. And according to the first owner and the pictures he had, it came on the car. And that's an example of what
There's
you're
a
talking
lot
about.
of that stuff. I can't tell you the amount of cars that I've seen, 89s and 90s and maybe even a 91 that was a silver graphic car, but it had gold center cap decals because that's all Saleen had at the time. Guess what? Lick it, stick it, ship it.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And can you say that's incorrect? Not really, because it was delivered that way from Saleen.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. That's a good point. And that's something to look for with these cars is that a lot of people are trying to now, because of where the values have gone, they're trying to make them factory correct or what would be as delivered. And really with a lot of the cars, you have to have documentation to support
Correct.
what's that. Otherwise, you're making some assumptions, right?
Well, there's a lot of assumptions you can make about these cars. That's why my phone rings all the time. Hey, is this car supposed to have this, this, and this? The other thing that people really haven't thought about is Saleen's aftermarket parts business was bigger than their car business. And it's not uncommon for a Saleen owner to buy something and stick it on the car. And one of my favorite phone conversations is like, well, but the car has this on it. Well, right, but it's a 20-plus-year-old car. Have you known the car since new? How do you know it came that way? Mm-hmm. Well, I saw another car that had that on it. Well, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're really, because you said, like you said, they're hand built.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were done in shop that you put them on jack stands and they worked on them and changed things out. So there's going to be variances throughout production.
It's usually minor variances to interrupt you. It's not like you didn't get flow fit seats or you didn't get Recaros.
Right.
It was the minor little tidbit pieces that maybe was late being delivered by a supplier, they happened to be out of stock, or they had a running change and they were trying something different on a car.
Well, surely people can relate to that now with, coming in the early 90s, coming out of the recession, the late 80s, early 90s, suppliers and things like that. You had production that would probably delay.
Correct. Oh, yeah.
It's no different than what we're dealing with
Exactly.
in the current environment. So with that, the 17-inch wheels started in 92.
Correct.
Okay. Now, their supplier for tires at the time, did they go with?
It was BF Goodrich.
Yeah.
And BF Goodrich stayed the supplier for the tires all the way through. Some of the early 92, or all the 92 cars, I should say, had these wheels that are on these two cars called a stern. Then later, somewhere in the production of 93, there's a lot of discussion, but there's really no concrete fact of when they changed over. Saleen changed to a wheel by Speedline. Speedline was going to be the contractor that they used for the 94 on up cars. Right. So part of the deal was they wanted wheels for this car too, and they did a switch and switched them. But I've seen cars that I know were bought from the original owner that had a set of these wheels that you would have thought would have had a set of the Speedline wheels.
Right.
Again, it's what they had sitting there in stock is what they put on the car.
Well, I remember I've seen pictures of 3 cars that actually had Logic wheels.
Correct. Logic
another,
was,
like a transition point. I don't know how they got a hold of those. And I do know Bear Brakes did sell those wheels at one point with their brake kits because it cleared the big brakes for the time. But Saleen used them in 93. And although Logic probably came into business, went out of business, I don't know that story. But I do know that there were a few cars that came with those.
I think there were about 3 cars, maybe 4 cars at the most that came with those. And my best guess is they didn't have anything to put on the cars. and they went out there to see what would work and what would fit, and they're like, these wheels look a lot alike, let's get a couple sets of these, we stick them on the car and send them up the road. I personally think they're one of the best looking wheels, and I would rather have those than any of the other wheels, but you can't find them. These wheels are actually very hard to find today too.
They are, and I know these just alone, the wheels, they demand a hefty sum when you're looking for them in specific offsets that fit these cars, because these are, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know there was like some 17 by 7.5, but 17 by 8, 17 by 9?
Right, 17 by 8, 17 by 9 with the sterns, and then the speed lines were 17 by 7.5 and 8.5. And that was the problem, is they were a little bit narrower, and most of the speed lines, they had to run a spacer and push them to the outside. So I don't know whether or not they ordered the wrong offset wheels or what, but they usually have a 1/4-inch spacer. Some of them are actually made onto the wheel.
Yeah, they bolt to it, right?
Right, and then other ones, it'll be a loose spacer that's obviously just floating on the hub.
Well, I do know that just from my own personal experience with the SA10s, all of the fronts on the SA10s have 2 1/4-inch spacers.
Correct.
But thank you for
Sure.
letting us do this. This is first of hopefully several videos that we'll be able to put together.
We've amassed a rather large collection of these cars, and we'd like to share them with people because we still get excited about the cars, and it's neat for people to be able to see stuff. I don't necessarily want a lot of people coming to visit, hence the reason that we had to put the blindfold on you on the way over here, but I think you understand.
Well, I do. I guess I would say thank you for not doing the latex glove check.
Yeah, well, the gag ball was the owner's idea, but yeah, and it's nice to be able to show people what the cars are supposed to look like. A lot of clones are out there, and a lot of people really don't know what a correct car is supposed to look like. And that was the whole idea, is to get the excitement up on these cars, be able to show the cars off, and for people to see what Saleen actually built.
Well, thanks for letting us be a front row seat to a lot of these cars. If you have any questions, feel free to post in the comments, like, tag, share, follow. Look up Mark LaMaskin's website, performanceautosport.com. And thanks for watching, guys. All right, purists, that's a wrap on a pair of Supercharged 93s. Don't forget to subscribe, tag, like, and share. And also with Mark, he's got several services he can offer you. You need to visit performanceautosport.com and reach out to him. If you're looking for a car, definitely reach out to him, because a lot of what he finds and has does not reach the website before it is sold. And if you need to consign a car, feel free to touch base with him as that as well. He can also help you with valuations for, I don't know, if you have, say, a collection of cars, and it doesn't have to be Saleen's, but he can provide documentation to insurance companies and to people that, say you get in an accident, he can help for insurance purposes as well on that side of things. So be sure to reach out to him directly. There's a lot of things he can do for you. And go to the Purist Motorsports website. There's a lot of blog information there, videos, things that we've got going on, our projects, 93 number 33 as well. And as always, whether you're driving them or restoring them, always enjoy them. Peace.